Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Mr. Zach Shaffer.
What's happening? Happy to be here.
Now, before we get into what you do professionally, I want to emphasize why I said your name like that. When I was in school, my teachers would read off my name and it would say Robert Robertson. So they would say it like it was a disease. So I was so used to them saying it like that. They're like, "What do you like to go by?" I'm like, "Robbie." And they're like, "Oh, like the guitar player." So we were talking before we hit record, but for people listening, I decided to look up who Robbie Robertson is. And this guitar player, what I mean by he is an asshole is he messed up over all of his bandmates. Um,
No.
Basically took lead on everything. Obviously, the band's named Robbie Robertson, but the whole factor is he just didn't give anybody any credit, anybody any money. And now he's creating new songs, and he's the reason I can't have a Twitter. So
Oh, wow.
he is a person I do not want on this podcast ever. Him and Jerry Seinfeld, I can't stand. No.
Well, don't tell Corey that because he loves his Seinfeld.
He gives me crap about it for his podcast. I'm like, sorry, I'll listen to your other one, but I'm not listening to that one.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Hey, okay. Well, first of all, on the Robbie Robertson tip, I was a huge fan of like some of the music that he did for some of the movies that he scored. Like he was a part of, I think it was called Powwow Highway. That might have been one of the movies he did. He did like the soundtrack for a documentary that was pretty cool. Great guitarist. I didn't know he was an asshole. Totally makes sense that he was.
Check his Twitter, bro. He posts like 50 times a day. I'm like, are you still relevant? Like, it's like,
Wow.
sure. Are you still trying to go with it? Like, you watch them all now, they're all depressed and like, we're going to drink wine tonight. And then 8 p.m., they're in bed. I'm like, this is sad. Before I watched her suck a pickle dry, and you're telling me now they're just like in bed by 6 p.m.
That's it's hilarious.
So,
I didn't realize him and Neil Sean from Journey apparently.
So exactly. So enough about me, I guess. What about you, Zach? Tell me a little bit about yourself, and if you want, what you do professionally. I'm guessing everyone can kind of pick up that you're friends with past guest Corey Stevenson. Great guy. Um, he's been a good friend of mine now since I've gotten to be able to podcast with him. And you guys also do the podcast together, where you guys do movie reviews, podcasting after dark.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I did go by Zachary Schaefer, and then I was being in school too. I hated having the teacher call out my name like that, so I just went by Zach, and the rest is history. Corey. I was a professional teacher for 15 years. I taught kindergarten, and then I quote unquote retired from that and got into voice acting, and been doing that for the better part of 4 years now, I guess. And then, Corey and I do podcasting after dark, which is breaking down our favorite cult classics from yesteryear and today. And then I run another podcast called $2 Late Fee, which is a retro 80s podcast focusing on 80s, early 90s stuff. And we have really cool guests on there from the 80s and 90s, actors, musicians, directors, etc. And basically that's my life now in a nutshell.
If
And
you're
I
seeing my
absolutely love
face
it.
right now, you're probably wondering why I'm making that smirk, and that's because you said voice acting, and it's one of my all-time favorite things to talk about, because I need to
Oh,
know
cool.
what voices are you doing. Impressions? Are we doing just audio when it comes to like trying to sound like an animal or trying to sound close to a professional voice?
Well, then I guess I'm perfect for your podcast because no, I okay. So years ago, I used to, when I taught and I read stories to my kids, they're like, "Oh, you should be a voice actor. You do so many great different voices." And then and I said, "Well, how do you get involved in that?" And I met one of my parents in the class was a very successful voice actor, and she recommended taking classes, meeting people, yada yada yada. And I thought, well, I'm great at doing impressions, right? And people said, well, no, you should do more of the classic commercials, the commercial reads, because you sound kind of like the typical everyman when you read a script, So or copy. I love doing impressions though. More specifically my own. Hank Azaria, who most people know
Up
as,
who?
yeah, from The Simpsons. And he, there's a great documentary called I Know That Voice, I think it's called. And he's interviewed on it, and he says, I got into voice acting by doing bad impressions of actors I love. He did a bad Sylvester Stallone, and that was one of the police officers on The Simpsons. Chief Wiggum is like another famous actor that he did a bad impression of. And so I'm like, okay, I do decent versions of like spot on characters, but you got to make it your own. You make your own characters out of everyday life. And so unfortunately or fortunately, I do a lot of impressions of like, my family members. That's the best source material for comedy sometimes. And so my wife's always like, oh, do that impression of my mom. And I'm like, not in front of your mom.
Yeah.
Because I would never do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
no,
It,
that's voice, that's the kind of voice acting I do.
so, all right, give me an impression of one of your family members, man. I got to hear.
Well, I mean,
Even though I
so
don't know your family members, I'm still going to get like if a child has a certain tone to their voice, or if it's someone in particular in your family, I think I could pick it up.
well, I'm from Michigan originally, and that Michigan accent is very specific, that Midwestern. So like when I would do an impression of my mom back in the day, it's always falsetto. It's like, oh, don't you know, I love to eat chocolate cake and wash my car, and oh, I've got to go get cash from the bank today. Oh, la di da.
Yeah, it's like the sweet and innocent one, the kind of the stereotype that we think of, like if you see like a Midwestern mom on like TV or something, and go, I got but I always make them sound Canadian when I start talking. Like I got the blue jeans button up above the waistline there, eh? Like I have that like tone to it and stuff. And I mean, it's funny because like from working like doing jet skis back in the summer, I would come across a bunch of foreign students, and a lot of the times you pick it up like pretty naturally, just like
Yeah.
accidentally start doing it. Like I got caught by a couple Irish people one time. My buddy Kevin, shout out to him. He he had the funniest story ever. He comes on the radio after being in a jet ski accident. He goes, I think I broke my fucking foot. And I have never laughed so hard in my entire life, but we would be talking, and as I was talking to him, I would start adopting his accent, and he would
Yeah,
stop me and he'd be like, "What are you doing there, lassie?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're speaking like me." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't mean to." And I start realizing your brain starts picking up on things around it to kind of make
totally.
it more comfortable and pick up your surroundings, which is why if like you're in a room filled with Irish people, you're naturally going to start doing that. And it sucks
Yeah.
because whenever you walk into a Chinese restaurant, you start speaking like that, and you have to not do that because that is not racially sensitive, I would say.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that one.
Have,
But you're right. You're right about like when you pick up on if you are around certain if you're around a certain type of people with a certain dialect or a cadence the way they speak, you automatically adopt it. For some weird reason, when I came out to California, I started wanting to do like bad Western impersonations, as a kid. And so I would come to school talking like this all the time. And people were like, where are you from, dude? Being in third grade and new to California. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I mean, it's just an impression. And they're like, why are you doing that?
Imagine if you kept that up all the way until you graduated, and then you were just like at the ending
Amazing.
speech, like, "Hey guys, I'm not from Texas," and then everyone's just like, "What?"
Whoa.
He had that southern drawl we all love so much. I try and play that game when I go out into public. I'll try and like put on an accent when I'm going up to the cashier or something, or I'll probably
Yeah.
do like a weird impression or impersonation or something. I love doing just voice acting impressions just because it's fun. I mean, you look ridiculous if you're doing it on camera, but honestly, like shout out to Mark who he does the voice of Wolverine, like you're saying. He does something that sounds like the character Wolverine. Like I didn't really know this side of voice acting, people getting close to what that pitch is. I thought you had to hit it
Mhm.
dead on. So I worked so hard to try and get like a Christopher Walken impression down. I hate Jerry Seinfeld, even though my buddy's like, you can do a great Jerry Seinfeld. I'm like, I refuse it. But it's about snapping into that character. Now, do you have any actors or anybody that you've tried that you're trying to narrow down? Because I feel like it's like a muscle. We all try and practice it a little bit.
Well, yeah, there's a great voice actor named Richard Horowitz, and he was an actor, on-screen actor in the 80s, did a ton of 80s comedies, and he started to get typecast, and then he found voice acting where he really found his true passion. And he talks about how, you know, you become the character when you're a kid and you're playing with your toys and you're doing this character. You're like, no, you're not my father. And then people go, well, that doesn't sound like Luke Skywalker. Well, as a kid, you don't care whether you sound like Luke Skywalker or
Thank
Darth Vader.
God you said Star Wars. Immediately said, you're not my father. I'm like, dude, he's got some emotional issues. Like, I started thinking, like, this kid's seen some shit.
Well, that's a whole other podcast. No, but no, but the idea is that you become the character. So, instead of thinking about like really nailing the specific, uh, it's not just about the voice, it's about the mannerisms, it's about everything. And even though you're not on screen, you're still acting, you're still playing, right? You're still playing that part. So, for the longest time, I was a huge fan of the movie Sling Blade, and I would do like this spot on, well, I reckon I'm gonna have to get me some taters, and I was like, what is it? It's not just the voice, it's the motion, it's the movement of your jaw, it's the
Yeah.
placement of everything,
You got to
and
bring the
so
jaw forward and go like, you
mm,
know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, I knew that because I,
totally,
I I saw that movie. It's one of my mom's favorites. It's like she always calls it her boyfriend, Billy Bob Thornton. She's met
yeah,
him a few times, and they've hung out and
oh
partied
cool.
together, which is kind of creepy when you see pictures of Sling Blade and your mom hanging out on a couch. It's like, hang on a second, that's too much information for the audience.
Yeah, again, another podcast, right?
Another podcast, exactly. But yeah, it's that cadence of the jaw too. Like, I'm not like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm super good at any of them. I can definitely do Christopher Walken pretty well when it comes to like, I can. I've heard him. I've listened to him a few times, but like, oh my, it's tragic news. Like you gotta bring those mannerisms in. It's like you gotta make sure your eyes wander a little bit. And I always
Totally.
like that side of things, like voice acting, doing this little cartoon animated series, because if you watch a series and you look up who is actually involved in it,
Yeah.
you get to realize like, oh my God, like this one woman does this many voices, such as like the voice, Alicia Cartwright, I think her name is the one that
Uh,
does, or the voices for Bart Simpson and so many others that are basically the voices of my childhood.
yeah, Nancy Cartwright.
Nancy
Yeah.
Cartwright, yeah.
And then if you look up like E.G. Daily, Elizabeth Daily, who a lot of people who were fans of the 80s would know her from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. She was the voice on Rugrats, Powerpuff Girls, yada, 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 like a million things. And yeah, and playing like young kids. The business aspect is challenging. I always equate it to going from being in a long-term relationship to dating every single day and paying for the person you're on the date with every single day
Yeah.
and never hearing back from that person after you thought we had a great date, because acting is auditioning all the time. Um, it's a very thankless in the sense that you don't get a lot in return, because there's so many people doing it now, but there's such a small amount who are actually getting cast and put on shows specifically, because that's what my passion was to be like on a cartoon, and I'm sure maybe similar to you. So where I found my sanity is in letting all that go, just having fun, appreciating the opportunity to be able to audition for projects that are really fun. I've had amazing opportunities to play, I mean, characters like for the new She-Ra series, or auditioning for this Jurassic Park cartoon that's coming out on Netflix. And so they're going to go typically, and this is not in any way to like squash dreams or anything like that. They're typically going to go with people they know. They're typically going to go with people that are a name. However, all it takes is that one opportunity. All it takes is that one chance to get a small role on a show. Once you do, you work your way up from there. And I'm also working with people independently. You know, anybody that's got an animated project that needs a voice that wants to do something fun, I'm always down. And so I've had a chance to do that, and that's been great. And you know, it's you work on your dream. It doesn't just happen overnight, right?
Yeah, I heard a good podcast actually yesterday. The Honeydew with Ryan Sickler. He's talking to Jamie Kennedy. I don't know if you remember that guy
Yeah,
who's been out of
totally.
the thing for a long time, but he said it best. He's like, if you're not doing work or if you're not spending 8 hours at work till like whatever 5 p.m., and then if you're not doing a comedy set at 6, and then if you're not doing a show by 7, and you're not doing a podcast by 9, then you're out of the fucking game. And that's basically what it is. And he talks about like when he got cut, he was in a movie with Brad Pitt, and he got cut from the movie, no credits or anything, and nobody knew that he was involved in it, basically. And it was because they went with a more more named person. And you're
Yeah,
thinking like, why wouldn't you do that if the person's better? And it's all because you need people. They don't, when it comes to voice acting, especially, even though you're not even going to know, nobody's going to look up who that guy is unless the name's on the front cover. They're just
yeah,
going to listen to the cartoon or whatever. They still want to be like, well, he's known, he might get us more attention, you'll share it more. It comes from that aspect of things. So I'm like,
totally.
but if the voice sounds better, you got to look past that. Like, if I hear somebody do a dead on impression or do something dead on for a voice or something I picture, I'm going to choose that person, whether they have credits or not. And I
Yeah,
think it's one of the things about comedy. It's one of the things about acting. It's so damn difficult. Like you're saying, dating every day, you're constantly trying out, not hearing back, being left on hold. Oh, we'll give you a call back. It's like, you give somebody your number and then next thing you know, you're waiting for a call back. Like, I can't just call them and ask, did I get it or not? You have to wait and
yeah.
find out like a month later when you see it on the TV, like, damn, well, I guess I didn't get it.
Yeah, that happened to me actually. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of all things 80s. Um, it really actually kicked in when my son was born because I started getting into like remembering what I loved about the 80s, like the toys and the cartoons, and because now my son is into it. And he got really into He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So at the time, I was at an agency where they would bring in um you had to go into audition. You didn't audition from home. Obviously, that's changed dramatically in the past 3 months. But back in the day, you had to always go into audition. And I had this great audition for a He-Man um, car commercial. Like they wanted the voice of He-Man, Skeletor, Man at Arms, the whole deal. And they're like, "Have you heard of He-Man before?" And I go, "Yeah," because I like cosplay and with my son and all that stuff. And so I go in, the engineer who didn't know me very well, she's like, "Wow, you nailed that." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I feel so good," you know? And sometimes you might not hear it 2 months before you get a call back because that's happened to me before. You know, you think you let it go, and then suddenly that girl you're super into gives you a call like, "Oh my God, you want to go out again?" You're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." So, because that's exactly what happens. And so I thought maybe I'll hear from, you know, the people on this and get a call back in a couple months. And then I'm watching like the World Series or something, and the commercial comes on, and my wife's like, "Didn't you audition for that?" And I go, "Yeah, I did." So
Well, even when you're talking, like doing your podcast with Corey, like, do you not try and do impressions on there as well? I mean, you guys are doing movie kind of
yeah,
looking back at films and stuff. You would think you'd be doing like a lot of impressions, at least trying it out. I mean, I think for everybody, when we decide doing a podcast or, doing something that involves us recording our voice, we decide, even when we're on the telephone, anybody that's ever used a landline and decided to call anybody, you disguise your voice sometimes. You would call a girl, be like, is Jennifer there? And the dad's like, who the fuck is a 50-year-old guy calling my 17-year-old daughter? And then
totally.
yeah, so, we all know what that experience is like, but I start to notice it because my parents are involved in radio. So I know what their voice really is compared to the one that they use. And that was one of
Yes.
the things for me when I got onto the microphone was how do I want to do this? Do I want to do it like you're listening to Out of the Blank podcast? And like, do I want to do it like that, or did I just want to talk? And I was like, I can't keep that voice up for an hour and a half. I've been on shows where guys can do it, but it's only like a 30-minute thing. But it's so weird trying. I'm like, dude, can you talk normal? I feel like I'm talking to the guy from Allstate.
Well, yeah, and that's funny you say that because I love to do this kind of gruff, menacing voice. There's a one aspect of voice acting that I love is when I read children's books. There's great characters in there, and you can really pull out some genuine like personality. And a voice I love to do all the time is this really got a deep guttural, demon or whatever you want it to be. But if you do that all day long, you're going to trash your voice.
Yeah.
So there's a few video game auditions I've had where they're calling for that. Back in the day, they would bring you in 8 hours. You'd be doing that all day long. Now they have these 2 hour maximum time limits because they recognize that you can't do that all day long and have a healthy career in voice acting. You can't. But what you're saying about being on the on podcasting after dark, yeah, it's more for fun. Like if I'm doing, you know, like I said about Hank Azaria, a bad impression might be the meal ticket for you. You might do a voice that you're like, oh, that was terrible. But other people might go, whoa, that was fantastic. And on top of it too, yeah, you're right. The way I talk on the podcast, the way I talk on $2 late fee, you're in show mode, just like you are right now with me. Even though you're like breaking it down and you're just being real, which we are, there's still like an energy level that's different, right? And it's so amazing how much energy changes your voice
Yeah.
when you're just, and it's really interesting.
I've tried really hard to try and I guess disintegrate or eliminate that energy, that that weird like getting to know each other stage through a podcast, just because I talk to so many
Yeah,
people all the time. And it's like to drop that after, it usually drops around 30 or 20 minutes in. But I mean, obviously we're still recorded, it still goes on, but it's really just showing people like I have an insane brain, insane in the membrane, but more like my conversations can go anywhere, and it's just different from depending on how it goes with us. You know what I mean? And I think it's just
totally.
giving people a perspective, like a fly on the wall when it comes to being in the room with something like that. And plus, I mean, we all got stuff. We all want to shoot the shit and we all want to talk. We just, about what is really comes down to who you are as a person. Do you want to just sit there and talk about yourself, or do you want to, talk about aliens? Do you want to talk about something that you don't ever really get a chance to? I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, totally. And I love that you're doing that. I love that. I've been doing, I'm relatively new to the podcast game. I've only been doing it for about a year now, not even a year. And it's such a fun opportunity to meet people and share stories, and for the world to get to know you better. Who knows? There could be a dude in Germany right now listening to your podcast going, or whatever, like your spot on Irish
You
impersonation.
almost did the German impression, dude. I was waiting for that one.
That might come out later, but
Uns
yeah.
grandpapa, uns grandpapa. I love that from Beer Fest, dude. Oh
Oh, dude,
my god.
that's a hilarious movie. Was that that wasn't the South Park guys who did that, right? No, they did basketball. That's
No,
right.
this was Broken Lizard, the guys that did Super Troopers.
That's right. Yeah,
When
yeah.
he walks in and that's that, uns grandpapa, they stole our recipe. I was like, I dying, dude. I couldn't handle it. Those are classic movies, man. Those ones to me are stuff that I liked watching when I was a kid, where my grandpa was like, I don't think you should be watching this. I was like, yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to tell mom unless you tell her. And he's like, I'm not fucking telling her.
How old were you when you saw Beer Fest?
Oh, dude, I was probably 14 years old.
Oh, that's fine.
It's like
That's fine.
okay age until you're seeing what was going on. Like he was banging that one chick and he
I
was
mean,
insanely hammered, and it says ass or whatever. It says asshole on his head. My
it, it
grandpa just looks at me like, whoa.
it will definitely accelerate your puberty. I know that when I was a kid, and I might have mentioned this on, I've definitely mentioned it on $2 late fee. I don't know about podcasting after dark. Yeah, I'm sure I have. My mom took me to movies that were way above my maturity level, and you know, for better or worse, I tend to look at it on the better side because it makes you who you are today. Like your sense of humor probably is derived from watching Beer Fest when you're 14 with your grandpa, versus some other kids who are 14 and they're like, nope, I know it says PG-13, but you just turned 14. So technically, like shit like that.
If somebody dropped that technically bullshit on me, I would lose my lid, man. I'll never forget when I got caught. I watched the movie Accepted, I think when it was like first out on like on demand. So it's like spending money like $6.99 on one of these movies. And
Yeah.
so I bought it and I was like, okay. And the girl said a word on there that I didn't know what it meant. And I think I was like 15. So I started saying it because I thought it sounded fine.
Oh
And
no.
I have an older brother, so a lot of my like witty comebacks or whatever I got, I would try and use on him first to be like, "That's new," you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the woman said, "Oh," or the guy said, "Hey, Casey, how'd college go?" And she said, "College is for pussies," and then walked away. So my brother pissed me off, and he was talking about schoolwork, calling me like an idiot for not doing it or something. I was like, "You know what? College is for pussies," and I was 15 or something, and the whole the whole house went silent. And my dad just peeks around the corner.
Yeah, dude.
He's like, "What did you just say?" And I'm like, "Pussies." And my dad's like, "Do you know what that word is?" And I'm like, "It's a female cat, right?" And he goes, "Yes, it is a female cat."
It's hilarious. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I remember saying the word sucks in front of my dad. Oh, Notre Dame sucks or whatever. Cause being back in Michigan and the two were playing each other. My dad pulled the car over to the side of the road and he's like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, I said, he's like, "Don't you ever say that again." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So for years, decades, I always thought the word sucks was just really terrible. Then as a teacher, I would hear kids say it. I'm like, we shouldn't say that. And now I'm like, whatever, who gives a shit? It's not even a big deal, but it's amazing what shapes you. So pussies
Different
is,
different households, man. I convinced at the
dude.
age of 15, I convinced my parents to cuss. I remember. It was at a dinner table. I think I was in middle school, 7th grade, and
Okay.
I was just sitting there. My brother's straight across from me, my mom's to my right, my dad's to my left, and I'm like, "Look, all the kids are cussing at school, and I just keep saying mother effer, keep saying all this." I was like, just let me cuss." And I obviously there's a word that we don't say. I was like, I'll never say that word. And they're like, "All right, you can cuss as long as you never say that word." And I was like, "Okay." So then I was just going around, my brother just looked at me like, "Did you just convince our parents to let you curse at people in school?" And I said, "I did." And he goes, "You got to fucking go into sales or something, man."
Yeah, dude.
Right? I was like, that was a good one. I didn't even pitch it that hard. I was mouthful of mashed potatoes, just like, "Yo, let me tell you something."
Well, you are on the precipice then of becoming something much greater than you may even know. And you'll look back on those days and be like, this all started the day I convinced my parents to start swearing. So
I just honestly, if I could just survive off getting a free Slurpee every single day, that'd be enough for
dude,
me.
okay. Yeah, I'm down with that.
That taquitos on the roller. For some reason, kids with all this vegan and all this other stuff don't know what that is, and that really upsets me. My cousin went 30 something years without having a taquito on the roller from 7-Eleven, and I literally showed him a 7-Eleven taquito. He's like, "I don't think it tastes good." I bought one, gave it to him. He loved it. Now, a year later, I just hung out with him probably like a month ago. And first thing, we go into 7-Eleven. He's getting a taquito off the roller. I'm like, "I got you hooked, dude. I got you hooked." He's like, "They're good, man."
I've never had a taquito on a roller, but I'm a little bit older than you are. So chalupa was my jam back in the day, and the late night Taco Bell run and getting that big ass chalupa was just that was the thing that got me.
What's a chalupa?
It's like a heavier taco. It's like a soft taco wrapped around a hard taco, and then and they would put this, like, at the time it was a big deal because it was like that Chipotle ranch sauce had just come out, and they put that on top. And then I think they made a deep fried one, which was basically like a heavier tortilla
The
that they
healthy
deep.
option. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I mean that shit back when I didn't have to worry about my metabolism and my cholesterol.
Dude, I know, man. I
You
used
know?
to I used to kill a bag of Doritos in one sitting, and then once I started eating clean and going to the gym and stuff,
Yeah.
it, I if I even look at a Dorito now, I'll vomit. I ate so much of them when I started working out. I was sweating nothing but spicy nacho Dorito,
Oh,
and I felt
oof.
so bad. Like I can't even walk down the chip aisle anymore. But this brings up a good thing. When we're saying introducing, or you get introduced to something and it completely changes your life, like showing somebody either a new food or showing somebody a movie. Have you ever showed anybody a movie that has, like, they've never seen it before and has completely blown their mind?
Oh yeah, dude. Like, my all-time favorite movie is The Warriors. I will, and my whole take on my favorite versus someone else's favorite. You dig what you love, like whatever makes you happy makes you happy. I love that meme or that GIF of the dude from Big Lebowski where he's like, "That's just like your opinion, man." When people are
That's
like,
my
"Oh, that movie sucks," you know.
that's my answer to that question, was The Big Lebowski for me.
Yeah. Okay, dude. Yeah. Okay. So when people are like, "Well, what's The Warriors about?" and then I'll show them the trailer, and they're like, "Oh, that looks silly," and like, just watch it. Just watch it. And if you're not into it, that's fine. But that movie has changed or blown some people's minds. I when I first started teaching, kids that are like were 5 at the time are now in their 20s, and I'm still friends with them, or they're coming back to me. They're finding me on Instagram, or they listen to the podcast and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Shaffer, I love that movie," you know. And there's this one kid, this kid Simon, who he watched The Warriors. He's like, "That movie changed my life," which I'm always happy to hear. Big Lebowski, that's an interesting movie because the year that came out, it came out either the same year or after Boogie Nights. And I went through this weird phase. Boogie Nights is another movie that changed my life. Where at first I was like, okay, I had to watch it with the right audience. And then once I watched it with the right audience, I was like, this is a masterpiece. Big Lebowski is a masterpiece.
I
Um,
saw it after, I think I heard so many recommendations just from like other movies referencing it or something. And I was
yeah,
like, what is this movie they keep talking about? And then I saw it, and then like I'll ask my parents, did you ever see The Big Lebowski? I don't know what that is. And I'm like, what? Like this is all like cult movie. It started a religion. And I think that came
totally.
from the movie Accepted. The movie where I said pussies was
Yeah.
because they talk about us inspiring a religion, and then that's what maybe look up religions, and then I ended up finding the parody religions, and that was Dudism, where I got my ordained minister's license. I went for that one.
No
Had to.
shit.
Yeah,
Really?
I got 3 of them. All right, I have 4 certificates total. 3 are under the Church of the Latter Saint Dude.
That's
One
awesome.
is the United Church of Bacon, where I have my ordained minister's license, and I went to my Maryland courthouse and paid to get that legalized so I can technically
Wow.
marry you. That was a whole fiasco that the woman was like, I can't believe I'm about to accept this. And I'm like, yeah, it took me an hour and a half. I had to pull up every rule book and every guideline to make sure I could get it done. Um, then I have one from the Order of the Jedi Knight, which is Order of the Jedi, whatever, those cult people. They never sent me a certificate, so I don't even count that one. And then Pastafarianism, they just didn't want me. I was like, you guys suck. They're like, you don't seem committed. I was like, I almost got arrested at my Maryland Department for Vehicle Transportation for wearing a pasta strainer on my head for my license photo, because that's what the religion allows. And they told me I'm not into it. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm not committed?
Wow.
I just almost got arrested for you.
I'd say you might be the most committed to it for trying to do that.
I'm committed on dumb shit.
I love it, dude.
When it came to my college degree, I have that in a drawer somewhere, but my certificates are
Yeah.
hanging on my wall because that means more to me than anything. Because if somebody holds their hands in a park, I'm fucking marrying you. Like I'm just running up. just running off.
Some might say we need more of that right now. More of that, you see people holding hands, call them out on that shit. Be like, yeah, okay, you're committed for life. I'm marrying your ass.
I'm okay with like I know this was a big thing like a few years ago. I know in our school, like when I was in high school, it was like public affection was a big problem. Like you couldn't, make out with your girlfriend, couldn't make out with your boyfriend, couldn't do anything, couldn't really. I mean, holding hands was as far as you could go. But I was like,
Wow.
I get it why they were cracking down so hard because basically people are just dry humping in the middle of the hallway before class. And I'm like, how else are you gonna relieve tension before math? Like shit. Like I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's tough. I'm about to learn about calculus and shit. I want to know about calculating that ass, like tossing that. That was a good one.
Well, they what was it? Ben Stiller and something about Mary, and they're like, his buddy's like, you got to rub one out before you go out on a date. It's just what you got to do. He's like,
Freaking
really? He's like, yeah, you got to do that hair gel scene. So
that freaking iconic. Oh yeah, if you got something, grab something off his. When she did that, I was like, is it really like that? Like I had see this when we talk about exposing kids to movies too early. There's murder movies that give them nightmares, and there's sex movies and things that they don't understand. Okay.
yeah, and it's interesting that I was exposed to so much. Having an older brother, I was exposed to so much more like violent, uh, horrific, intense, shocking movies. Not necessarily, sex or anything like that. I think the first movie I saw, and it was with my mom, and I saw *Romancing the Stone*, and I'm like, there was a love scene, quote unquote, because it was very tame and gentle, and I'm like, I felt weird about that, obviously because I was with my mom, but growing up being like 6 years old and watching horror films and having night terrors because of that and being traumatized at such a young age, it didn't scar me, and I feel like in many ways it actually emboldened my creativity, like made it more kind of just diverse. And then it definitely made my play with my action figures a lot more intense because people were not just getting thrown in jail; they were they were dying. But
Snapped his friggin' neck.
yeah, I would recreate Predator with my GI Joes, and my mom's like, "What are you doing?" Like, they're dead.
They're dead. They're not coming back. There's no afterlife in this scenario. Have you ever had a movie that I guess would say exposed you to, or maybe was uncomfortable that you watched with like a family member? Like like you're sitting there watching, you're like, oh, that this is uncomfortable for all of us here.
Well, yeah, kind of fairly recently, maybe about 10 years ago, my dad came out to visit, and my dad and my dad, from the sucks comment earlier, you understand that he's pretty conservative guy, and he and I very different. He came out to visit, and the show Louis was on FX. It had just come out, Louis
Yeah.
C.K.'s comedy, which I think the first two seasons are gold. But there was an episode where Louis having sex with this girl, and then he has to go out and get condoms. And I'm watching it with my dad. The first episode was very tame, just straight up, nothing too off the wall. And this episode was bonkers because my dad's like, "Oh, let's watch another one," and the whole room just was like silent, and I was so uncomfortable.
Feel that air gets sucked out of the room.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's like, what is going on right now? My mom is so weird. My mom, I would watch movies like Hellraiser with my mom, Child's Play with my mom, like super violent, intense films. And I wouldn't give two shits. With my dad, I was like, late night comedy on FX. And I'm checking my watch to see how much time is left on the show. Yeah, that was uncomfortable. But the thing is, like, it's so funny how sex is like such more of a taboo than violence, and which is really should be the other way around, in my opinion,
Yeah, isn't it
especially.
like you can watch people kiss, but and like make out and basically almost have sex, but then if you chop somebody's head off, it's a rated R.
I think so. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something really twisted like that, and I never understood that until I mean, I've had a few of those scenarios. I think what makes me funny is the fact that I might be completely ignorant to a lot of the things or at least a lot of my stories come from like an ignorant state of mind or not thinking all the way through. Even though I'm
Okay.
pretty critical on a lot of my thinking, it's just when I was a kid, I was an idiot. I went to my grandparents, like which my grandmom's in Baltimore. And at the time I didn't know, I didn't find out until I was 20, which I'm making a comedy bit. I'm trying to throw this in there, but I figured out at
Yeah,
the age
no,
of
it's all good.
20, my grandmom was a lesbian. Nobody told me. So I always thought it was her roommates that were, over there. So I missed all the warning signs because you don't even think to ask. And I remember picking up a Blockbuster movie. This was when they were still a thing. And I grabbed this movie, and I forgot what the name of it was, but it was rated R. It had a few good actors in it. I was like, I really want to get this. I think Bruce Willis or somebody was in it, but I was like, I want to get this. It's like a scary movie, but it's also really, really fun, and it's supposed to be really, really good. She's like, okay, sure. So she buys it, and we're all watching it, and I'm sitting on the couch. My grandmom's sitting on the couch to my left, and her, I guess, lover would be, which I thought was a roommate at the time, on the right. And
Okay.
so we're sitting there watching this movie, and a lesbian sex scene pops up,
Ooh.
and I just paused it. And I mean, it went for a good couple minutes. Like you just heard the open mouth, like that sound. So it was really uncomfortable. I just looked over. I was probably 12. I just looked over. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I went in my guest room, and I sat there, and I was so upset. I was staring at the wall. Little did I know, now that I think about it, they were probably getting turned on by that. But I've had so many
Oh
freaking
man.
moments in my life. Like I'm at the movie theaters with my grandparents, my brother's grandparents were half siblings. And it's my grandmom and my grandpa. My grandmom wanted to see Date Night with Steve Carell.
Okay.
I saw the movie Death at a Funeral right beside it. I
Okay.
said, can we go see Death at a Funeral? Now, if you've seen Death at a Funeral, it's a black comedy, but it makes a lot of white jokes. I mean, a lot. So I went in there, and we're all sitting down, we're watching it. I was so uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, like my grandparents are not going to enjoy this. Like this is humor that's kind of like, I don't know. I don't even know what to think. And we're sitting there listening to it. And my grandma just starts snorting laughing when freaking Donald Glover or what is it, Danny Glover? He's sitting on top of the roof naked, high as
Yeah.
shit. He's like, I'm high as fucking shit. And he's like slamming it. Like I thought that was scary to me, but my grandma was laughing so hard. My grandpa was like, "That's a great film. That's a great film." I was like, "Oh my God, thank God." I wanted to die.
Man, your grandparents sound like people to party with for sure. So
You don't find this out until you're older.
yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
thought for so long my grandpa was this stern, like you're gonna sit there all night until you eat the rest of your vegetables.
Yeah,
And then like
totally.
as I get older, he's like, you feel like ordering pizza? I'm like, what pizza are we ordering? He's like, Little Caesars. I'm like, that's shit pizza. He's like, you're shit pizza. I'm like, whoa,
I love
love you,
Little Caesars.
love you, really?
Well, no, growing up in Michigan, that was Little Caesars is from Detroit. It's based in Detroit, and that's all we ever got because that's what you get, right? And I hadn't had Pizza Hut or Domino's or anything like that. This is like in the 80s though. Um but dude, like it's funny you say that thing about you can't leave the table till you eat all your food. It's almost like in the first stages when you're a kid, young teenager, it's all about setting the framework. And then once you turn 16, 17, 18, it's not that they don't give a shit anymore, but it's almost like the grandparents are like, well, we don't have, you're on your own. You're on your own now. So whatever mistakes you make is on you. And back in the day, it's like, well, whatever you do wrong, it's on us. So maybe that's why they're cooler now. I don't know. I mean,
It's
who
definitely
knows?
changed. I mean, I went over there, I think, like a month ago or 2 months ago or something, and we're not supposed to have like chocolate milk or any soda or anything out in the living room for so long when I was a kid. And I went over there, and I just see my grandpa chilling with the chocolate milk on his like relaxing lounge chair, watching some John Wayne movies. And I'm like, "What are you doing, dude? At the table, man, at the table." He goes, "Robbie, I'm 72 fucking years old. If I want chocolate milk while I watch John Wayne, I'm drinking chocolate milk while I watch John Wayne." I'm like,
That's hilarious.
I feel like that should be a quote somewhere. Like that should be written in stone and put on a plaque because
Yeah, dude.
that's some crazy words of wisdom.
Put it on a t-shirt. Put it on a t-shirt. Well, I will tell you this. My grandfather, who he was kind of hardened like that too. Back, that's all I knew of him because when he passed away, he hadn't really changed all that much. But um, he had a someone gave him a bumper sticker that he put on a piece of wood and shellacked it and put it on his wall in his kitchen, and it said, "If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit." And so and that those words were what got me many jobs back in the day, because the interviewer would be like, "Okay, well, do you have anything else you want to say?" And I'd say, "Yeah, well, like my grandpa always used to leave me with this quote," and 9 times out of 10 people would laugh and they're like, "Oh, you're great," and they'd end up getting the job. So I'm just saying, that chocolate milk quote might get you farther in life than you think it might.
I've had a few people on my Twitter just comment like something I've said in an episode where I'm like, when did I say that? And they're like, this was the best quote of your episode. I was like, I just honestly just start going and hopefully it sounds correct and it just the words fumble together and make sense. I mean, I've gotten a lot of great things from my grandparents and from my parents. I think the main thing was like that bonding experience you get when you're watching a movie, when you're watching a film or
Yeah,
something, just being in the
totally.
same room. It doesn't even matter if you guys aren't super into the movie, but that whole wholesome family experience, I think, like with everything that happened with the pandemic and all that, it's like more people got to see that a little bit more and see the importance of that because I feel like for so long we were losing it. I think jobs just consumed us and we were just like, I can't even, watch Netflix with my family. It's all about going to separate rooms and eat at separate times.
Yeah, no, I think you that's a really, really good point. Even if the movies, like you said, like even if the movies aren't that great, it's the time you'll never forget. And because yeah, many of my recollections of my grandparents um were sitting on the couch watching movies, right? And looking back, some of the movies sucked, some of them weren't that great, some of them were great. But now, yeah, being on the couch, like I said, my son is super into the 80s stuff. So we watched Transformers, the movie, the other day for like the fifth or sixth time, with the animated one from the 80s, which by and far is pretty much the best Transformers movie,
Oh yeah.
possibly besides Bumblebee. Um, yeah, right. So he's never going to forget that. And I think, yeah, I remember when I was a teenager being in a separate room than my folks, my mom and my stepdad, because they had their show they wanted to watch. I had my show I wanted to watch. And then there was no compromise.
Show.
They're like, we're gonna watch the X Files. I'm like, no, I want to watch. I don't even know what I wanted to watch back
Blow drying your hair over there, Zach. I see. We don't even own a hair dryer. Oh,
then. Where'd the TV guide go with Dolly Parton on the cover? What happened?
dude,
Where'd
my
that?
brother had a Jessica Simpson's poster in his room. I stole that many a times. I
I'm
will
sure you
admit
did.
that on this podcast. And if he hears it, just say.
Well, I had a breakthrough moment recently. There's an '80s movie called Just One of the Guys, and uh, it's just a fun teen comedy movie. But the brother in that movie has Playboy centerfolds all over his walls, ceiling. Every space of wall is covered with Playboy centerfolds. This is a PG-13 movie, and there is more nudity in this movie than many other R-rated '80s films of that time. My brother had his walls covered the exact same way, and I went, "Oh my god! I think Eric did that because of the movie he saw." And so I go in his room. I was like 9 or 10. I'm like, I want to go play with my GI Joes. Then I hit like 11 or 12. I was like, I just want to hang out in his room now.
I just want to be here all day.
What's going on? This is a new religion, man. So going back to what you were saying earlier about all your different certificates, isn't it a trip that you have this college diploma that everybody puts emphasis on, right?
Doesn't mean shit.
No,
I
it doesn't.
I I have people when I get a
It
guest and they
doesn't.
have a doctorate degree, a PhD, they send
Yeah.
me all their PhD stuff. I said that does not. It's a piece of paper to me. That
Yeah.
that does not determine how good of a conversation I'm going to have with you with your PhDs. Honestly, the worst I've had have been with people with PhDs because all they can do is talk statistics or talk facts and not talk real conversation. My degree, it doesn't mean anything to me. It was a waste of my time. I just did it for a family thing. Like, you know what? I'll be the first person to go to college. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
put in the work for it. But honestly, the funner ones I've had is spending all that time at the Maryland courthouse trying to convince this woman in front of me, like, there's no freaking way I'm going to let you get an ordained minister's license under a church I've never heard of. But I pulled a deep meaning out of my ass. I was like, the Church of Bacon is for atheists. It's a safeguard. It's supposed to be all these people that are Christian. At the time, this was like this. Now we're seeing with all millennials, no religion's the new religion, basically. But at the time, like Christianity, Catholics, all that was so popular. And I was just like, this gives a place for people that don't know what to believe in, a safe
Yeah.
haven, so they don't get made fun of. You just say you're under the United Church of Bacon. It's about finding deep meaning into life. And she just looks at me. She's like, can't believe I'm going to stamp this shit. And I was like, yes,
Yeah,
but
dude.
it's an accomplishment, man. But I'm like, it's like hacking life, dude. You got to find those moments, man. But I want to comment on the poster thing you mentioned. I remember my grandma, she let us decorate our rooms at her house. So, you style it up how you want it your own. My brother had Daisy Duke posters everywhere and, surfer and skater stuff everywhere. And she was like,
Yeah.
what do you want? And I was like, dragons. And she was like, you
Yeah.
want dragons? And I was like, yeah. She's like, you don't want any bikini girls? And we're like looking at the things in Walmart, like you see the Sports Illustrated one, and I'm like, no, dragons, just dragons. I just want dragons. And as I get them up on the walls, I'm just looking. I'm like, what the fuck did I say? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was that whole like, I can't believe I just did that.
I don't know, man. Like, look, it seems to be some of the major game changers in this world are the creative minds, or maybe the ones back in the day who had the dragons on their wall, the ones who, uh, were reading all sorts of fantasy shit. And who knows? I think maybe that benefited you. My boy who's 5 is super into D&D and Greek mythology and shit like that.
That's my
So
favorite Greek
yeah,
mythology, man.
I'm telling. I've told him from and he's still a little young to understand it. But I said you'll learn that every book, movie, story comes from Greek mythology. All of it does. It all comes back to that. That's like the baseline. This is controversial, but like the Bible lifted passages of Greek mythology, So here you are with these great stories of like good versus evil, and his brain is just exploding with like ideas. And someone made a joke. They're like, oh, is your kid gonna be the one with the 12-sided die in his bag and D&D parties at his house every night or whatever? And I said,
I got my Yu-Gi-Oh cards in my backpack.
Shit, hey man, like, look, I said that's a hell of a lot better than him going out and huffing paint or whatever the hell, and just being. I'd rather have him do something that is creatively sparking him than mindlessly, whatever. Like, look, I think that's more important to me. So, dragons fucking rule, dude. I'm down.
I think we need more people like that, because I saw a video of these people that were about to record a fight on a New York subway. And like, it was getting pretty tense. Everyone's pulling out their phones like, oh shit, here's about to go down. They go, you want to go? And they push each other. And then right when they push each other, they both pull out Beyblades out of their backpacks and start battling in the middle of the subway. And all these people, adults and people of that generation, just stood and laughed and clapped and were like all getting into it, like, whoa, like. And I think more of that is needed in this world than a lot of the stuff where we already know where it's going to go. Oh, he's going to hit him with a chair. I saw a girl in 11th grade called Sharkeisha. Look her up on YouTube. She gets hit with a fucking, wait, is it a shovel? I think so. It's like, Sharkeisha, don't hit her. And my teacher's just like, oh my God, this is on YouTube? I'm like, yeah, there's a thing called bum fights. They just pick up bums and have them fight each other. And he goes, how is this funny? It's like AFV, just like watching people get hurt. But I'm like, could we do that in a different way where we can just laugh at just being like, sometimes just idiocy in life? I mean, a lot of movies capture that in like a comedy movie.
Yeah, for real, dude. Like I'm all about, idiots doing stuff to themselves and laughing my ass off over that. But the violence, laughing at people knocking the shit out of each other just is not entertaining to me either. I think the more empathy and the more, moments that we can share where we're like, well, no one's hurting anybody, and we're looking out for each other after those dudes, blew their balls up with a rocket. Everyone checked to make sure they were okay. It's a little bit of empathy and sympathy in there. But yeah, like I think we do need more of that in life, and I think it's uh, there's there's much better humor than seeing some dude getting hurt and by somebody else and not even asking for it.
I'm about to play a game with you.
Okay,
And here's how the game's going to go. And I just
I'm
thought of
ready.
it. So if we fail at it, that's okay.
Okay.
One of us is going to quote a movie line. Another person has to say it, then quote another movie line. And then I have to guess it. So it's like back and forth, guess.
Oh
So
man, this is gonna be hard because your scope is
my
out of my
scope's like
realm.
a little bit of 90s to the 2000s to everything. Do you want to stick to newer ones? Do you want to stick to like movies, maybe like the past 10 years rather than go down into like the oldies? Because if you start pulling out 80s shit, I'm gone.
This game is gonna end miserably because that's my base, dude. Like, uh, you know, it, Corey will throw out a line from Mad Max Fury Road, and I'll be like, I saw it once. I mean, I liked it.
I'll pull one out of your ballpark. All right, that's a good limit here. I'll try and find some that you're definitely going to know, and you just got to guess things you think I would know.
Okay.
So any newer ones, obviously, you would probably hit close with me. For me, I'll start off. I'll go Yippee Ki-Yay.
Oh, it's Die Hard.
Okay,
Yeah.
balls in your
Um.
court there,
Okay.
Zach.
How about this one? The shitter's full.
No freaking way you're stomping me on the first question. Shitter's full. I remember that movie, but I don't know what the name is. Oh man. Play the what is it that jingle?
It's in the same vein as the last one you gave me.
Shitter's full.
Same
Who-
season. Same
Which
season.
which actor is in it?
Well, Randy Quaid said that one, but Chevy Chase.
Oh, Vacation.
Yeah, the Christmas Vacation. Yeah.
Christmas Vacation. Yeah. Shitter's full. Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot that one. All right, how about let's see. I want to stick in your ball. I'm trying to think of movies. I guess I would probably quote the easiest one though. Should be what is it? Oh man, I don't want to say because then you're easily gonna guess it. It's freaking Over the Line.
Oh God, yeah. Big Lebowski,
Yeah,
right?
Over the Line. Market Zero.
Okay, I got one more. I'll go. Um, uh, if it if you want to see it, it's 5. If you want me to jerk off, it's 10.
That's Beer Fest.
No, that's Boogie Nights.
That's Boogie Nights. You know he
Yeah.
says that same line in Beer Fest, right?
Oh, he does?
Where he's giving the hand jobs under the bridge. Remember that?
No, dude.
They
No,
go to pick up Barry, and they drive into this crooked neighborhood. And I remember because the guy, it's Super Troopers, obviously more iconic, but
yeah.
dude Finks in the back goes, "Where are we? Where are we?" And they look over, and it's Barry, and he goes, "No, my car, fuck off!" And he walks up to the car, and he goes, "All right, guys, it's $5 for a hand job, $2 for a blow job, $3 for," and he starts naming off all these prices. He goes, "And then if it's gonna be your finger in my ass," and he just starts going like and naming all these prices. And he goes, "I only
Oh
have
my
50.
God.
I only have 50 cents." And the dude's in the back like shouting that out.
I need to watch that again. Oh my God.
Good
What was
movie.
the one they did? What was the one they did that was on the island? It was like a horror film. Um, and oh shit. It's same guys, same the lizard
Broken
dudes.
Lizard.
Yeah, Broken Lizard. It's a slasher movie on an island. I haven't seen it in forever, but it's really entertaining.
I don't
Highly
know if I've
recommend it.
seen that one, but I know at the ending of Beer Fest they hinted at a movie called Pot Fest, and now Snoop
Okay.
Dogg is actually trying to get that one actually made.
Oh, nice. Well, we need more of that in this world. So,
I mean, we always can go with a good stoner comedy. That's a safe one. But what type
yeah,
of genre do you typically prefer?
it's a great question. Depends on my damn dude. Like for the longest time, I would have said horror, but I really think the action uh action sports genre is my favorite. Sports movies that like dramatics, I guess like the sub genre, I guess if you will. Movies like Karate Kid and Rocky Four, Anthem. I call them anthem movies because there's always a song in those movies that gets you pumped up, gets you, like you get a little choked up, teary eyed at the end, and then you're cheering by the last frame. Those are
Yeah.
the movies I love now. Prior to having a kid, it was all about slasher gore, not slasher, but more like John Carpenter, Prince of Darkness, like fantasy horror, I guess. That's my.
I rarely like watching a serious movie unless it's like a horror film, but I prefer more in the lines of like comedies, but not like the super stoner ones, but like Step Brothers. Like
Yeah, dude, that's great.
that type of movie's like my good type of comedy. But like if you start going into the realm where it's like Blaze at 420, bro, I'm like, I'm not on Instagram. I'm tired of running into all these people. 420 Blaze it chick 7,000 on Instagram. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Now what's your real name? Oh, my name is Hippie Harley 22. It's like, that's not your God-given name. Your parents did not name you that at all. Like, how do you know? My name is Astral. It's like, well, now we're just playing make-believe. That's more make-believe than the Church of Bacon that I've been ordained under. That's
I think you got yourself a movie there.
what I'm saying. Let's create it. Let's get Corey together. We can create a movie. Well, I think I've wasted enough of your time, Zach. I am going to ask that please promote your pages, both podcasts. $2 late fee we didn't really talk about. If you want to give a quick rundown for the audience on that one and where
Thanks.
to find it at.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, first of all, you didn't waste my time. Second of all, I had a great time. So thanks for having me on the show. Yes, you can find me at Podcasting After Dark. That is the movie breakdown show that Corey Stevenson and I do. It's a lot of fun. And then $2 late fee is with my co-host Dustin Rubin and I. We're both voice actors. We reminisce about our favorite moments. We take a movie and then a song from that movie and then the year that the movie came out, and we talk about what happened that year as well. And we have great actors and performers on that. We've had Eric Roberts, who, if you don't know who he is, you'll recognize his face right away. He's been in over 500 movies, which is insane. There's a great music composer named Vince DiCola, which many people wouldn't recognize right away from this generation. But if you look up Transformers, the movie, he did all the music for that. Rocky IV, he did all the music for that. Like, iconic shit. And he told some crazy stories, some really great stories. So we get some really cool guests on the show. You mentioned Die Hard. Later this month, we're going to be interviewing. There's a character in Die Hard named Ellis, who's like the sleazeball guy. He's like, he works he's a sleazeball side character who, he's like, Hans, Bubby, I'm your white knight. That's one of his famous lines from the movie. Anyways, that guy has been in a shit ton of movies besides Die Hard, and we're interviewing him next month. And his name's Hart Bachner. If you look him up, he did a movie called PCU. If you love comedies, it's a great 90s comedy. It was considered the Animal House of the 90s. It's hilarious. Jon Favreau, before he directed Iron Man, before he was in the movie Swingers or Rudy, he's in that. And Snoop Dogg is a big fan. So there you go. Anyways, that's $2 late fee. Both of them, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, $2 late fee podcast and Podcasting After Dark. Thanks for letting me plug.
Now you get to end it with an impression. You get to choose. You can either do an impression of a person or do one of your voices.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you this. This is a little fun fact. So Disney was casting Crush from Finding Nemo and for Disneyland. And I auditioned with probably 50, 60 other people, booked the audition. Then I realized which I was so excited. I'm like, I'm going to be the next voice of Crush. And they said, well, you're going to be Crush for one time, once a week, for 15 minutes a day. And then other people will be doing Crush as well. And I said, well, okay, so I'll just be doing the 15-minute show and then that's it. They're like, no, you're going to be an employee. You're going to be a cast member of Disneyland. I said, so I'm going to be like operating rides and stuff. They're like, well, you'll be assisting. And I thought, okay, well, I don't need that. So I ended up not taking it because I said, I'm sorry, I'm a voice actor. However, Crush was the voice that I nailed. So Um, I'll give you a little bit of crush. Chaw, hey little dude, it's time to go do some toga. Turtle yoga. Chaw.
I love that. But
Thanks.
now you have to make me toss out a Disney fact. Did you know nobody ever dies in Disneyland?
That's a great fact.
No, I'm dead serious though. What they do is if you die in
Oh,
the park, they
yeah.
don't pronounce you dead. They take you outside and pronounce you dead. That's technically how nobody dies in Disneyland or Disney World.
That's a horrible fun fact.
I freaking swear to you, it's true. Disneyland
I believe
is
you.
some weird shit. And I'm
Yeah.
getting somebody who works there on soon. So everybody stay tuned. Hopefully she doesn't hear this, but I have so many questions.
Yeah, I have bittersweet feelings about that because Turtle getting crush and not getting to do it kind of crushed me for a minute, but it's all good.
Hey, if you get
It's
your
all
head
good.
taken off in the park, at least you know you didn't die at Disney
Yeah,
World.
no
You died
thanks.
outside.